I always knew I wasn't the favorite, but I never thought they'd go so far as to pretend I didn't exist on the most important day of my life. My wedding wasn't extravagant, just a quiet countryside ceremony surrounded by close friends, a few distant relatives, and the man I loved with my whole soul. The only people missing, my own parents. Not a text, not a call, not even a dry excuse, just absence. For months, I tried to convince myself they must have had a reason, an emergency, a mistake, a car accident, anything that would make their silence forgivable. But then I saw the photos. Facebook made sure I didn't miss them. My mother dressed in an expensive silk gown, beaming in every frame. My father raising his glass beside my sister, who had thrown a random backyard barbecue the same day as my wedding. A barbecue with balloons and a Grillmaster banner. I was heartbroken. My husband held me as I cried myself to sleep that night, still in my wedding dress. A week later, I swallowed my pride and drove to their house. I didn't go there to fight. I just wanted to understand why. What did I do that made me so forgettable, so disposable? When I arrived, my mom opened the door like I was an uninvited guest. "Oh, it's you," she muttered. No hug, no congratulations, just a stiff sigh and a gesture to come in like I was a neighbor selling cookies. I asked once softly why they missed my wedding. My voice cracked halfway through. I was barely holding it together. My father didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to me slowly and without warning slapped me. The sting was nothing compared to the shock. My mother gasped, not out of concern, but because I didn't fall to my knees. I stood frozen as he pointed a finger in my face. "You dare question us after marrying him? You've embarrassed this family enough." I didn't even know what enough meant. My husband was kind, loyal, and supportive. He treated me better than my father ever had. But maybe that was the problem. He couldn't control me anymore. I turned to my mother, hoping for a flicker of softness, but she simply looked at me with that cold, familiar smirk. "You got married without our blessing. You made your bed. Now lie in it." They didn't just skip my wedding. They erased it. And then, they erased me. I left that night with red cheeks and a shattered heart. But something inside me also hardened. The girl they dismissed, ignored, and slapped into silence. She was gone. That night, I promised myself one thing. I would never beg for their love again. I'd rise without them. And one day, when they came knocking, I'd remember exactly how it felt to stand on that porch, unseen, unwanted, and humiliated. And that day came far sooner than they expected. The weeks that followed felt hollow, like walking through the ruins of a life I used to believe in. I stayed off social media. I didn't answer texts. My husband, Mark, gave me the space I didn't know I needed. I remember sitting by our small kitchen window every morning, watching the sunrise and wondering how love from strangers could feel more real than the blood running through my veins. But somewhere between the silence and the shame, I remembered something. I wasn't weak. I was the one who built myself when they tore me down over and over. I'd survived their judgment, their comparisons to my perfect sister, their cold shoulders at school recitals and birthdays they always conveniently forgot. And now I had survived the ultimate betrayal, being erased from my own family on my wedding day. And that meant I was finally free. So I got to work. By day, I poured myself into the small home business I had started long ago, custom event planning and decor. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I had been doing local jobs, baby showers, small engagements, but now I wanted more. I redesigned my website, rebranded with new colors and logo, and created social media pages that didn't carry my last name. I didn't want their name on anything I was about to build. The growth was slow but steady. I worked relentlessly, sometimes 14-hour days, planning corporate events, high-profile parties, and private galas. I barely slept. I didn't have time to mourn the parents I never really had. And then it happened. One of my weddings, a destination ceremony I designed for a tech entrepreneur and his actress bride, went viral. Suddenly, I had thousands of followers. DMs flooded in. Influencers wanted collabs. A lifestyle magazine called me the underdog turned design queen. My brand exploded. Money followed. Sure, but it wasn't the money that made me smile in the dark. It was the autonomy, the peace, the knowledge that everything I had now, every chair I sat in, every chandelier I chose for a client, was built by the same woman they said was a disappointment. The same woman they slapped like a child and told to be quiet. And as fate would have it, my rise came just in time for their fall. It started with whispers from my aunt. She called one night, hesitant, asking if I knew anything about my parents' financial troubles. I didn't. I hadn't spoken to them in almost a year. But apparently, my father had made a series of bad investments. My mother had stopped working altogether. My sister, well, she was too busy planning yet another destination wedding to notice the storm brewing in the family house. And then I got the call. It was my mother. I almost didn't recognize the number. Her voice was thinner now, tired, her tone almost sweet. "Sweetheart," she said, "we're in a little trouble." Sweetheart. I almost laughed. She explained that the bank was threatening to seize the house, that my father had collapsed from stress, that my sister's wedding was next month, and they needed a little help to keep the family from falling apart. "Just a small loan," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "We know you're doing well. We're proud of you, darling." Proud. The word tasted like ash. I told her I'd think about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't feel angry. I felt calm. And in that calm, I knew what I had to do. I didn't block them. I didn't yell. I didn't write some viral takedown on social media. I responded with a simple email the next day. Polite, professional. Subject, regarding your request. Body. Unfortunately, my company does not extend charity to individuals who once told me I cost them money. Please direct future inquiries to my assistant. Then I sent a package, a beautifully wrapped box. Inside it, a single pair of socks, the same ones they handed me the day they gifted my sister a BMW. Only these had my company logo stitched across the soles in gold thread. Beneath them, a card. "You told me girls like me walk, so I walked away and built a kingdom." I never heard from them again. But 2 weeks later, I got a notification. My sister's wedding planner had pulled out last minute. Guess who got the call to fill in? When the inquiry came in, I stared at the name in disbelief. Claire Beaumont, my sister. She had no idea the request landed directly in my inbox. The tone was desperate yet polished, likely written by an assistant. Apparently, her wedding planner had fallen sick. And now, just a month before the big day, her grand destination wedding in Napa Valley was in jeopardy. I could have declined. I could have blocked the email and moved on. But something in me stirred. Not vengeance, not anger. Something quieter, sharper. Opportunity. I replied through my company's executive account under a different name, keeping my identity hidden beneath the luxury brand I had spent years building. My assistant handled all external communication, and my name never came up. Claire never asked. She likely assumed the owner was some aloof, high-end designer who didn't deal directly with clients. I was invited to the venue 2 weeks before the event to meet the bride and walk through the final plans. It was a stunning vineyard estate with gold-trimmed gates, vintage wine cellars, and sprawling lavender fields. Fitting for someone like Claire, always desperate to be envied. I arrived early, dressed simply. Black slacks, white blouse, hair tied neatly back, no glam, no makeup. I wasn't there to perform. I was there to watch. When Claire walked in with my mother trailing behind her, I didn't flinch. My mother didn't even recognize me at first, too distracted by Claire's shrill instructions. But Claire stopped mid-sentence, eyes narrowing. Recognition flickered. "No way," she said slowly, her fake French manicure glinting in the sunlight. "Is that?" My mother turned and gasped like she'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. I smiled gently. "Didn't you hear? girls like me walk into rooms like this now. Claire's lips twisted. You run this place. I own the company running this place, I replied. You're the client. I'm the signature on the contract. Her face paled. My mother looked like she wanted the ground to open up beneath her. I gave them a choice. We continue as planned professionally, or I walk and this wedding goes up in smoke. You decide. Of course, they chose to continue. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in restraint. I planned the wedding meticulously. Every detail was perfect, flawless even. I hired the best chefs, florists, and stylists. Not for them, but for me. I wanted no one to question my professionalism. No room for them to say I sabotaged anything until the reception. The final toast was to be given by the parents. My father was not in attendance, apparently still ill from the stress of losing their home. My mother took the stage in her designer gown, eyes gleaming with fake pride. To my beautiful daughter, she said into the mic, the star of our family. We always knew she would be the one to shine. A few guests clapped awkwardly. And to those who support her, especially our loved ones who've been with us through every joy, every sacrifice. Her eyes flicked to me. That's when it happened. The lights dimmed. A projector lit up the vineyard wall. A video began playing. No voiceover, no dramatic music. Just a simple, beautifully edited montage of my journey. Clips of me working through nights, photos of the events I planned. Magazine covers with my face, short interviews where I spoke about building a company from nothing. And then finally the logo of my company, the same one stitched into the socks I sent. The room went silent. Then I walked onto the stage. I wasn't invited to my own wedding, I began, my voice steady. But I was hired to build hers, and I did, with the same hands my parents once struck when I asked why they missed my big day. Gasps echoed. I turned to my mother. You said I was the shame of this family, but the real shame is how easily you sold your love to the daughter who cost you the most and abandoned the one who built herself in your silence. I stepped down without waiting for applause, but people stood anyway. Some clapped, others stared in stunned silence. My sister burst into tears. My mother slumped in her seat like the air had been knocked from her lungs. Outside, as I walked toward the limo I had arranged for myself, not rented mine, I heard someone call after me. Wait! It was Claire. Why would you do all of this? She asked. Her voice cracked, mascara smudging her cheeks. I looked at her gently because, unlike you, I don't destroy people to win. I rebuild myself. Then I left. The limo door closed behind me with a soft click. And as we pulled away from the vineyard gates, I watched the fairy tale crumble in the rearview mirror. And I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I had already won.